Vince Gilligan has managed to pull off some of the hardest things to pull off in entertainment. A satisfying finale to a massively popular show, a sequel that somehow lives up to crazy anticipation, and a spin-off prequel that isn't merely a self-aggrandizing fan service cash grab, but rather an incredible story worthy of being told on its own. Saying pulled off is honestly an understatement. None of these things have just been passably done. They've all been excellent. And with Better Call Saul finally wrapping up, I wanted to go through briefly what made it so special and ask the ultimately annoying question, is it better than Breaking Bad? So, let's get into it. Spoilers ahead.
Wait, Jimmy, what?
It's all good, man.
We're going to start off with something that Breaking Bad did extremely well, which was carried over to Better Call Saul. Character arcs and the gradual, subtle progression of them. Breaking Bad comment sections are known for the now often parody takes on, "This is the exact moment Walter White became Heisenberg." And in a similar way, Better Call Saul comment sections have seen a lot of, "This is the exact moment Jimmy McGill became Saul Goodman." But the reason for those is that these shows masterfully develop these characters to the point where they're almost unrecognizable by the end compared to where they started. And you can see it's done so well because people have a million different takes on when the change actually took place, showing ultimately it took place slowly and cleverly over time, to the point where you don't notice until it's too late. As opposed to a show like Game of Thrones, for example, that had really solid character progression for about 80% of it, and then at the end just threw it all away and took a sharp left turn and was like, yeah, this character is now evil, and this character now feels this way that contradicts what they've done this whole time. It takes you out of it completely, because you're thinking, hold on, that's not a logical culmination of this journey we've been on. But in these two shows, and I guess I should narrow in on Better Call Saul, it's done masterfully, and not just for Jimmy. Honestly, I think Kim might have the most interesting arc throughout the series, going from her financially tough childhood, to working her way through the ranks with hard work, but still feeling indebted to HHM, to indulging in the thrill of Jimmy's schemes more and more until it goes horribly wrong and she has to reevaluate and restart her entire life. I can say all that in one sentence there, and if you've seen the show, you go, yeah, that's her story. But it doesn't do justice to just how well it's presented, how believable and realistic each little step of the journey feels leading to this ending, and also how well that story is weaved in with every other characters. Of course, Jimmy's journey to Saul Goodmaning is fantastic as well, but Jimmy and Chuck's relationship, I think, is the other standout journey here. The pieces of this love-hate, fragmented, jealous, bitter, spiteful, but also compassionate and caring relationship is built up so well that it's jaw-dropping and heartbreaking to see where it finally ends up. And obviously, all of these arcs are carried by unbelievable performances that somehow haven't won any Emmys. Insanity. Quick reminder here that if you're enjoying this video, drop a like, subscribe, hit the bell button, and comment your thoughts on Better Call Saul down below. Also, after the video, check out my podcast, The Poorly Planned Podcast. Fun movie and TV talk. Alright, back to the video.
Believe it. You can't hide who you really are forever.
On a similar note to the characters, the various storylines of the show and how they intersect is another fantastic element of it. Now initially, this might have been my one complaint with Better Call Saul. From around seasons 1 to 3, the two main storylines of the show, the Jimmy, Kim, Chuck, Howard lawyer stuff, and the Mike, Nacho, Gus, Salamanca cartel stuff, stay pretty separate for the most part. And at times that might make the show feel a bit oddly paced. However, it's when the two start to cross over more that you see the brilliance of establishing these two storylines kind of independently of each other, and then having them intersect. Of course, there are connections beforehand which make it all feel like one show, but I can't think of a better way to have that big climactic feeling that this show's ending has than the way the show did it. I will never forget the moment that Lalo shoots Howard. It is one of the most shocking moments in TV history because of the way these two storylines have been built up. The lawyer side of things feels maybe more realistic, down to earth, more safe than the cartel side. So seeing Lalo even just entering the same room as Howard immediately felt so much more tense and dangerous because it was taking this psychotic crazy character and putting him in what felt like a more realistic world. It felt wrong, like it almost wasn't supposed to be allowed to happen. It honestly felt kind of like Lalo had showed up in your own living room at that point, and the way they'd done these storylines was how they achieved that effect. That effect that brought me into the show's world more than any other moment in a show or movie in recent memory. And this type of feeling continues throughout season 6, and had been present in parts for some of those last seasons, but with Kim especially being taken from the lawyer world and being thrust into this terrifying, violent cartel world, which ups the stakes and feels like a real ramping up of tension in that last bit of the show. The stakes had been high in their own ways on both sides, but combining them made for an incredibly tense final stretch. Now, I'm not saying this was done just to make one moment more impactful and dramatic. Like I said, there are large parts of those final seasons that are enhanced by two well-established storylines with their respective characters coming together, but even if it had just been done for this one moment, it'd still be worth mentioning. This is another one that Breaking Bad did a lot, but I noticed it more in Better Call Saul, and while this might seem like a smaller detail, it's one of the things that stood out the most to me about this show. Everyone knows this show has incredible cinematography. Some of, if not the best I've ever seen on TV. Not just how beautifully composed some of the shots are, but also what the shots actually tell you through visuals about a specific moment. Whether it be how characters are standing or framed, the lighting, the colors, the camera movement, whatever it is, the show is fantastically shot. And that leads into what I can only describe as the show starting a lot of its episodes and scenes with a close-up or a montage or a close-up montage or some intensely well-shot sequence of something seemingly unrelated to the main plot or something you can't quite figure out what is, and it then leading into the larger story or coming back later and you being like, oh, that's what that meant. If you haven't seen the show, that might have just sounded like nonsense, but if you have, you know exactly what I mean. It's something that, with the exception of Breaking Bad, I haven't really seen that often before, and it makes for such compelling viewing. Not only is whatever the opening bit is very well shot and edited, making it interesting and sometimes satisfying or aesthetically pleasing to watch, even if you have no idea what it is, but it keeps you wondering how it's going to play into the episode, because with this show, you know it's going to tie in some clever way. Oftentimes there's symbolism in there as well. It's just a really creative and innovative way to get a viewer hooked, and then tie it all back together later in an episode, or individual scene. And I don't feel like it gets mentioned enough about the show. Like, everyone rightly says the cinematography is amazing, but I don't really hear people mention this specific point. So I wanted to point that out.
Come on, before mistakes are made. Come on, talk to me, guys, huh?
Now for the almighty question. Is Better Call Saul better than Breaking Bad? It is a dumb internet-type question where everything needs to be pitted against everything and everything has to be some kind of argument. Both of these are phenomenal, and while they have distinct similarities in style, in story, and ultimately in quality, there are also lots of subtle differences, like a slightly more comedic tone to Better Call Saul, or the larger amount of action and the grander scale of Breaking Bad. However, if you did put me on the spot right now, I titled the video this, so I gotta give an answer, I'd probably say Better Call Saul is better, but that's also because I just finished watching an incredible conclusion of years worth of storytelling, and I haven't watched Breaking Bad all the way through since like 2017. So of course I'm going to have some recency bias. Honestly, this could be an interesting question to revisit down the line, when the dust has settled more, and maybe I've rewatched both, but as of now, let's just appreciate both of these as the truly brilliant pieces of storytelling that they are. I know some of this video might have sounded kind of pretentious, but come on, if there were ever pieces of media to use words like brilliant and masterful for, I think Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul are those pieces of media. So, those are my thoughts on Better Call Saul. What did you think of it? And do you think it's better, worse, or just as awesome as Breaking Bad? Let me know all of your thoughts down below in the comments. While you're at it, be sure to like this video, check out my Instagram and Twitter at BHL_Hudson, my TikTok at BHLHudson, my Letterboxd at RealBHLHudson. Check out this podcast that I do with a friend of mine where we talk about movies, TV shows, a bunch of nonsense. It's called The Poorly Planned Podcast. And subscribe for more videos like the one you just watched. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.